How many Gospels are there? 4. All right. Who can name them? In the order they were written? That's a little more difficult, isn't it? All right.
Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Thank you very much. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. All right. And they portray Jesus in 4 different avenues of his ministry and his life. Okay? Matthew portrays Jesus as the King of Israel. The lineage of the King of Israel. The lineage in the Gospel of Matthew is whose lineage?
David.
What?
David.
Well, it's David's lineage, but whose lineage is it? Is it Joseph's or Mary's? Whose lineage is it? Matthew is the King of Israel, so it would be who?
Joseph.
Joseph's lineage. Luke is Mary's lineage because he's the Son of Man. He's related to mankind through Mary, not through Joseph. All right. Joseph was basically his earthly father, but not really his father. But he was the heir. He was the number one son. He was the heir of his family. And when he was about to die on the cross of Calvary, he gave that heirship to somebody else. Who was that? John. All right. He didn't give it to his brothers, but he gave it to John. So watch after his mother and care for her. All right. And the estate. Matthew, the 9th chapter now. We've got a long chapter here. We're going to see if we can go through it today. And by the way, the 8th chapter was proving the messianic credentials of Christ, wasn't it? Proving the messianic credentials of Christ. That's where he proved that he was the Messiah. Okay? The Gospel of Matthew is written to Israel to show them that Jesus was their Messiah. Now we have, in the 8th chapter, in the 9th chapter, we have Jesus' credentials as the Messiah. Without doubt that he is the Messiah of Israel, okay? That's why this is written. That's the purpose of it. When you're interpreting any book, any scripture, or the Bible or anything, how do you do that? Who's speaking? Who's he speaking to, and what's the subject? That's basically how you interpret it, okay? And getting into the boat. Who's getting into the boat? Jesus. And getting into the boat, he crossed over and came to his own city. Where did Jesus stay most of the time? Now, how many cities were there around the Sea of Galilee? I'm not getting you to name them all, but how many were there?
Did you say
9 cities. All of them had over 15,000 people in them. Okay? So that's a lot of people, okay? He went over there, and he's going into the city that he called his, and his main ministry was in what city? Capernaum. He was raised in Nazareth, but Nazareth, when he started preaching Nazareth, they tried to kill him.
Yeah.
They rejected him in Nazareth.
Yeah.
And he went to Capernaum, and he went to around Galilee. Galilee means what? Galilee means what? Circle. Galilee means circle, okay? And all the cities encircled Galilee, and he went to one of them called Capernaum, Capharnaum, all right? Which means beloved covering. Who lived there? Which one of the disciples lived there? Peter, all right? And he stayed a lot in Peter's house, didn't he? Evidently. And he called this city his own. So that's where he's gone. He's gone to Capernaum. You can write that down someplace in your Bible if you want to. And behold, they kept on bringing, I'm giving this from the original language a little bit, they kept on bringing to him a paralytic, all right, lying on a bed. And Jesus, seeing their faith, said to the paralytic, now, pay attention to what he says. This guy is totally paralyzed. He's what you call a quadriplegic. Period. All right? All of his life he has had to have somebody else feed him, clothe him, clean him, do whatever. He's a total paralytic. Okay? Take courage, my son. Your sins are forgiven. Now, who's the only one that can forgive sins? God. Is Jesus God? Of course he is. The Jews got mad. They're mad now. He's proving who he is. He's the Messiah. By the way, can the Messiah forgive sins? Because he's God, isn't he? All right? He is God-man. He is the Son of Woman that the book of Enoch calls the Son of Woman. All right? The Son of Man also, as the book of Luke calls it. The Son of Man, as Daniel would call him. And Daniel tells the exact time when he was going to be born. And the scriptures are just full of prophecies of Jesus. They knew what town he was going to be born in. He was going to be born in Bethlehem. He was going to be raised in Nazareth. He was going to be hauled off into Egypt because Herod tried to kill him. Herod. You know, Herod had set this whole mess up. Did you know that? Herod the Great. That's what you want to call him. Herod the Great had set up all this whole mess. He was a very powerful man. Mark Antony and Cleopatra set him up. And Herod married a Jewish woman. One of his wives was a Jewish woman. And the high priest in Jerusalem, that was high priest when Herod took office as the king of Israel, he knew that they would object to him. So you know what he did to the high priest? He killed him. He murdered the high priest in Israel. He imported a bunch more Jews from Babylon and married one of the married a girl and then appointed her brother as high priest. So now we have a complete, what we call a conspiracy against Jesus. Okay? A complete conspiracy against Jesus. He's running around. He built Caesarea down on the Mediterranean. He built the Herodian where he was buried in that gold coffin, that one that looked like a volcano. He built Masada. He built cities all over. He built a temple above Abraham's tomb in Machpelah or Hebron. He built things all over. He built a great big aqueduct, as you saw when I studied biblical archaeology for 4 weeks. We see all the things he did. But I'm telling you, at the time when Jesus came on the scene, it was a setup. This was a total, absolute, corrupt society. The high priest was bought and paid for. Herod was on the throne, and he should have been on the throne. Jesus should have been on the throne. He was heir to the throne of Israel, according to the Gospel of Matthew. All right? Now in verse 3, he said to him, your sins are forgiven, to this paralytic person. And behold, some of the scribes said to themselves, this is the scribes. Now who were the scribes? Who was the scribe? They were educated people. Every synagogue had a scribe, okay? The synagogue went down and he recorded every man and every woman that got married. He recorded every engagement. He recorded all debts. He recorded, now this is in every synagogue. Hold on, Brother Bill. This scribe, and every synagogue have a scribe in it. And he was the one that would sit down there, and when you would barter or trade for something, if you made a contract, the scribe would write it all down. So the scribe knew everybody's business. Okay? And every scribe knew the other scribe. There was a scribe in Nazareth that knew the scribe in Capernaum. All right? Now he's in Capernaum, is where he's doing all this. And some of the scribes said to themselves, this is a group of scribes. Okay? They also would write the law and have the law in every synagogue. These were all the scribes. These were and today we'd call them a county clerk.
That's the question I have.
All right. Today we'd call them a county clerk. Okay? And this fellow blasphemed. The scribe said, now these are the public officials. This is the county clerk. He says, this man blasphemed. And Jesus, knowing their thoughts, said, why are you thinking evil in your hearts? Which is easier to say, your sins are forgiven, or to say, rise, stand up and walk. But in order that you may know that the Son of Man and the King of Israel and the Messiah, okay, has authority on earth to forgive sins, then he said to the paralytic, rise up, take your bed, and go home. And boy, did they have a wall-eyed conniption fit over that. He was a doctor practicing medicine without a license and on the wrong day of the week, too. On the wrong day of the week. Verse number 6. Let's look at that and look at some things. In order that ye may know that exousion. Exousion is the word. That means authority. Matthew 28 and 18. Someone go to Matthew 28, 18 and holler that out really good. Matthew 28 and verse 18 and 19 and 20. Gabriel, are you over there?
Is it?
Matthew 28, 18, 19, and 20.
Yeah.
Then Jesus came to them and said, All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age.
Now this is the church. He's speaking to the church. He's giving the authority to the church to go out and to carry out the gospel. He said, I have given you my authority. And right here, he's telling the scribes that I have authority to forgive sin. All right, I have authority to forgive sins. He's already called out his church. His church is following him around. There have been 30 and 40,000 people in some congregations around Jesus, around the Sea of Galilee, which means what? Circle. 9 cities. 15,000 plus people in every city. That's a lot of people. And people are coming from all over. And this was a crossroads of the whole Middle East. And Western Europe, everybody went to here. So there were thousands and thousands of people coming by. And he rose and went home. He stood up. Now, he never stood up before. And when the multitude saw this, they were filled with awe. And they glorified God who had given such authority to men. Authority. See that word authority? All right. Had given such authority and power. All right. Authority and power. Exousia. Matthew 9 and verse 9. Now Matthew is called. That's the guy that wrote the book here. Okay. Matthew. Let's find out what kind of a scoundrel he was. He was a lawyer and a tax collector. And Jesus passed from there, and he saw a man called Matthew. Matthew means what? This is a test. Nobody remembers? I'm not going to tell you. Go back. What does it mean?
According to
Huh?
gift of the Lord.
Gift of the Lord. Thank you, Brother Bill. Thank you, Brother Bill. I was going to make one of you drag it out. Gift of the Lord. All right? And Jesus passed on from there, and he saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax office. Here we have county clerks, and now we have a tax assessor and a tax collector. Okay? These are a bunch of scoundrels, usually. This is the city dads, what you might call the city dads. Okay? And he said to him, Follow me. And he rose up and immediately followed him. He was an obedient guy. And this was a scoundrel, too. Matthew, the tax collectors had all of the authority to rob people. They could rob people all they wanted. Last Wednesday night, I think I taught on income tax and pay your taxes and the history of taxes. And it happened that as he was reclining at the table in the house, behold, many tax collectors, a lot of these tax collectors, all kinds of tax collectors. In the history of mankind, every nation that ever existed taxed their citizens. Usually it was a prince, and they had power over everybody. In Europe, no one could own land during the feudal system. All right? No one could own land. Period. It was the prince's land. You know, a poor man couldn't even go out and hunt a rabbit and kill it and eat it, or a pheasant or anything in England or in Germany. If you went out and you went into the forest to kill yourself a deer or a rabbit or a partridge or whatever, they could take you and try you and for killing the king's livestock. You didn't have anything. And they were all taxed and levied. In nations where people were free, supposedly, you could own land, but not in the king system. In Israel, we know it was what we call, originally Israel was a what? A theocratic socialist nation. Then it turned into a what? A socialist monarchy. Kind of like England is today. Okay? Now, every nation in America, when they came over here, one of the reasons why they wanted to take all the land away from the Indians is because the Indians didn't use the land. And besides that, the Indians didn't pay any taxes on the land. All the white people, all the Europeans that came over in this country, when they got 160 acres or whatever, they paid taxes on that land. And in 1905, when they finally put in the Dawes Act, they were going to take all the land and make private, take it from the Indians lived in a socialist democracy. But here, this was a republic, okay? And they were going to excise taxes from everybody that lived in this country, and they would only tax them according to what property they owned. If you didn't own property, you didn't pay taxes. Simple as that. But they took the land from the Indians, and they said, now, you Indians are going to have to pay taxes after 20 years from now. A lot of the Indians lost their money, or lost their property when they started having to pay taxes. They didn't have any money. Bill Paul, the one that came in my class and wrote the book Shadow of an Indian Star, his grandfather, Paul, which was William Eichert Paul I, okay? He went to World War I. While he was in World War I, he had his allotment in the Tabletop Mountains near Paul's Valley, okay? When he got back from World War I, the state had confiscated his land for lack of taxes. All right? And that was one of the reasons that they took the land away from the Indians, because the Indians didn't pay taxes. And finally, when they had to pay taxes, they ended up getting it all anyway. That's how they lost all the land. But anyway, here, people are being taxed. Okay? They're taxed on the land, what property, where they live, whatever. Okay? Now, you have to remember that everybody lived in the city back at this period of time. Here is a walled city. Kind of like these people that live in the cities here that have walled cities, what's called gated communities. These were gated communities of ancient time. Okay? And in these gated communities, they had a gate, of course. And everybody that was a farmer, they had lands out here all over the place, pieces of land. They would leave out of here every day and go to their farm. They didn't live out on the farm because it was not safe. They go into the gated community. Okay? But they were taxed on whatever land and whatever they did. Okay? So now here's the tax technique. Is this helping you understand this a little bit? What's going on, a little history of this? Okay. He went to this big dinner. Now there's a lot of tax gatherers and sinners. Look at that word sinners there. Look at that sinners in verse 10. Let's look at verse 10. Verse number 10. In the house with many tax collectors and sinners. Sinners. Those that have gone astray. That's the word. It's hamartia. But hamartia, you know, many people say it's missed the mark. It doesn't mean to miss the mark. It means to go astray, go out of bounds. They've gone out of bounds. They've gone on their own road in their lives, okay? They're wayward souls. Came and were dining with Jesus and his church. All right, it's his church, his mathetes. The word disciples there is mathetes, and mathetes means what? Your mathetes is here today because you're going to Sunday school. You didn't go just to church, you're going to Sunday school, and you become a habitual learner. A mathetes, okay, a disciple. And when the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, why is your teacher eating with tax gatherers and people that have gone astray and sinners? But when he heard this, who's he? Jesus. He said, it is not those who are healthy who need a what? A doctor. But those who are sick. Now you never need a doctor until you get sick, do you? That's when you need a doctor. But go and learn what this means. I desire compassion, all right? I desire worship and not sacrifice. Go try to find out what this really means. For I did not come to call the righteous, but sinners. The Jews, the Pharisees, considered themselves very righteous, didn't they? In Hosea 6 and 6, Jesus is quoting a verse of Scripture. In Hosea 6 and 6. He said, I desire real worship and not sacrifices. You can take all the sacrifices you want and make sacrifices, but if your heart's not right with God, if you don't love God, if you don't worship God in your heart, you're a lost man. Now all you Pharisees standing out there and praying, and they prayed for one reason, to show off. They prayed to be heard. Not by God, but by men. Okay? Now, if you pray to be heard by men and not God, that's a sorry prayer. I used to love to hear my little daughter pray. She talked to God like he was her best friend. That really meant a lot to me. That's when you really, God is your best friend. Stay in touch with him. You do want to stay in touch with your best friend, don't you? Then the disciples of John came. The disciples of John. Now this was a different bunch, isn't it? Who's this John? Not Dr. John back there. Do you have any disciples, Dr. John? I want to thank you for aiming so many people in my class. Over and over again they come and they said, Dr. John told me to come to your class.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, brother. This isn't Dr. John back there now. This is John who?
Different.
John the Dipper. John the Baptist. That's who this is. Now, John the Baptist had disciples even though he didn't want them. Did you hear what I said? John the Baptist had disciples and he didn't want them. Did he? John didn't want his disciples. When Jesus came, he told them, go away. Go to the Master. I came to just point you to him. There's nothing else. Boy, he's getting more famous than you are. That's what he's supposed to do. He must increase and I must decrease. Period. I came to show you the way. He was, in the Old Testament, there was a guy there in the book of Genesis, and his name was Eliezer. Remember when we studied this in Genesis from the Hebrew? Eliezer was Abraham's servant. And he sent Eliezer, he was going to make him the master of his house and was going to give him all the inheritance that he had because he didn't think he was going to have a child. And he was what we call his head servant. His eldest and his head servant, the man he could really trust with his life. Okay? Now, he sent Eliezer to get Isaac a wife. And Eliezer was a type of John the Baptist. John the Baptist came to call the bride to the bridegroom. But he wasn't going to marry the bride, was he? Was John going to marry the bride? Now these disciples fell in love with John's teaching. And they fell in love with John. And they weren't wanting to go to Jesus. They wanted to follow him. We have, in the book of Acts, we have one that shows up over there. And his name was Apollos, remember? And he comes in there, and John's disciples were even baptizing other people in the name of John, and he had no authority to do it. John had authority from heaven to baptize, but his disciples didn't have any authority to baptize because Jesus had called out his church, and the church is the one that had the administrative keys of the kingdom, not John's disciples. And Apollos had to get baptized again. He was an Anabaptist, Jim. They were all Anabaptists. Brother Bill.
So you're saying that John's disciples didn't have the authority to baptize?
No.
Did John get on them for that?
Well, he told them he said, well, yeah, he did. Right, just what I told you. They came to him and said, he's more famous, he's baptizing more than we are. And he said, well, I must decrease, he must increase. He said, I came to point you to him. But they still wanted to follow him. Even after they were dead, they were still following John. They had little John the Baptist churches, okay? They were unscriptural churches. And they were going out and they were baptizing people with no authority. And one of them was Apollos. And he shows up preaching greatly, because Apollos was a great Greek speaker. He could speak in Koine and classical Greek. Beautiful rhetoric speaker. But he didn't have any authority and he didn't have any baptism.
And so he didn't increase it.
Well, he got saved and probably he wrote the book of Hebrews. Okay, later on Paul. Okay. Probably, I said, not for sure. And the disciples of John came to him asking, why do we and the Pharisees fast, and your disciples do not fast? Why do we fast? And why do the Pharisees fast? Now, what had they done? They had lined up with the Pharisees, hadn't they? And Jesus said to them, the attendants of the bridegroom cannot mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them, can they? Why is he talking about mourning here? Why is Jesus talking about mourning? Because there was going to be a time when his bride would mourn when he was killed. Right now he's with them. There's no reason for them to mourn. There's no reason for them to fast. There's no reason for them to cry and tear their clothing and put sackcloth on and throw ashes on their heads, because the bride is with them. Their groom is with them. But the days will come when the bridegroom is taken from them, and they will fast. All right, they will fast. But no one puts a patch on an unshrunk cloth on an old garment, for the patch pulls away from the garment, and a worse tear results. Now, most of you people in here don't know what sandpaperized clothing is, do you? Do you know what it is, Brother David? How many of you know that what the original 501 Levi's are? I wear them all the time. Original 501 Levi's, unshrunk, 501, the real ones. They're not sandpaperized, okay? And what it means is you go down and you buy a pair of pants about 4 inches too big around your waist and about 2 or 3 inches too long in the leg. And then you wash them and they shrink up. Am I teaching you something new? All right. That's what I'm talking about here. You have to know. That's the way cloth was a long time. When you wash real cotton or any of these real cloths, they shrink when you wash them. Okay? I remember when I was young, Brother Bill, you're almost my age, so you know what I'm talking about. I don't know whether you did this or not, but all the boys, Brother Rex, you know what I'm talking about. We went out and we bought Levi's 501s, the original Levi's, to fit us. Period. They fit. And then, you never washed them. All the old cowboys that would go and buy a pair of Levi's and wear them for 6 months and never wash them. They would take a washcloth and wash their clothes with them on them. Brother Bill, did you ever do that? Yeah. Brother Rex, did you do that?
When you washed them,
you rolled them up underneath. You rolled them up underneath, and they got slick and shiny.
And smelly.
And smelly. And you wore them, and you could take them off and stand them up in the corner by themselves. But if you washed them, am I telling the truth, Doris? you young people done lost all of this. You missed. Look what you missed. But if you can't understand this unless you know that, okay? They wore white T-shirts even in the wintertime, and Levi's.
Yep.
And they washed them with a washcloth on them. And that's all the washing they ever got. When they wore them plumb out, you threw them away and got some more new ones.
And if you could afford a belt, it was about a ½ inch thick. But most usually you had a piece of string that you tied together on the hook.
Now, if you buy a brand new pair of pants, a brand new cloth, and you take out one that's been washed 4 or 5 times, you can't use new cloth on old pants. Because when you wash it, what happens? It just sticks it up. It'll be all messed up. It'll shrink. The new cloth will shrink, so you can't put a brand new piece of cloth on old clothes. What he's saying here, the whole figure, the whole parable of this, is that the law and grace and the law age and the church age don't mix. It's totally different. It's a totally different story. Now in verse number 17, nor do men put new wine into old wine bottles or wine skins. Otherwise the wine skins burst and the wine pours out and the wine skins are ruined. But they put new wine into fresh wine skins and both are preserved. All right, wine skins. How many of you ever seen sheep herders, that carry a leather bag? It's a bottle, a leather bottle, okay? And they'll squirt wine in it. Usually the wine is a mixture of wine and water. Because over there in Europe and in the Middle East, you don't drink wine. Don't drink water. Because if you do, you're going to get a washing machine stomach. You're going to have the Rocky Mountain quickstep for a long time. Okay? That's just the way it is. Now, they mix wine with their water to purify the water. Okay? You mix wine with water. The alcohol purifies the water. Okay? And that's what it's talking about right here. If you're going to make wine ferments. You cork it up and you ferment it. And they use wine skins. They use animal skins. And when you put it in there and it ferments, it would stretch the wine skins, the leather, until the point of almost bursting it. Okay? Then you use the wine up out of it, and then you poured water in it and use that for a canteen. All right? And from then on, you put some water in it and wine. But you didn't put grape juice in there and let it ferment. If you put grape juice and that one in there and let it ferment, it's going to break it. And you've lost your wine and you lost your water. You lost it all. And it's good for nothing. You just throw it away now and you have to go start over again. The law and grace does not mix. Period. Law and grace doesn't mix. You're saved by grace. You're not saved by grace and works. Galatians said that. Colossians said that. The book of Hebrews says that. Ephesians says that. Ephesians 2:8. I don't remember how to say this in English. For in grace ye are having been saved through faith. And the faith is not out of you. It's a gift of God. Not of works, lest anyone should brag and boast. It's a gift of God. For we are created unto Christ, unto good works. You work because you have been saved. You don't work to get saved, and you're not going to partially work to get saved either. There is no partial work for your salvation. Verse number 18 now. Miracles of healing. These are his messianic credentials. While he was saying these things to them, behold, there came in a synagogue an official. A synagogue official. All right, here's a big shot again. Another public official. We've got the tax collectors. We've got the county clerks. Now we've got an official in a synagogue. All right? What in the world is a synagogue official? What kind of guy is this? Anybody say that anywhere? What it is? Huh? Huh? Number 18. Number 8 is 18. Is that what it was? 18? All right. Number 18. Ruler of the synagogue. It's like a sergeant of arms or whatever, okay? And he bowed down before him, saying, my daughter has just died. Now here is the synagogue ruler or official that got saved. I want you to understand this. He got saved. He is saved when he spoke these words. My daughter has just died, but come and lay your hand upon her, and she shall live. You remember when Mary and Martha and Lazarus? Remember when one of them came to him and says, oh, if you were only here, my daughter, or Lazarus would not have died. He said, don't worry about him. He said, he only sleeps. Oh, he's dead. He's been dead for 3 days. Jesus says, he shall live. And she said, I know he shall live in the resurrection. And what did Jesus tell her? I am the resurrection and the life. Any man believes in me shall not die, but he shall live forever. And this guy believes this before Mary. She will live. Then Jesus arose and kept on following him. That word began there in the original language. It will say kept on following him, continuous action. And so did his church members, his disciples, his habitual learners, and what they did. And behold, a woman who had been suffering from a hemorrhage for 12 years. This woman had been bleeding with a feminine disorder. She had some type of feminine disorder, and she had been hemorrhaging for 12 years. And we find out in other places that they had, all of the doctors around there had pilfered her for everything that she had, and she was broke, trying to get well. 12 years. They didn't have hysterectomies and things back then to cure this type of thing. I mean, this woman was in bad shape. And she came up behind him and touched the fringe of his cloak. What does that mean? The fringe of his garment, actually. What was on the fringe of the garment? Who he was. The Pharisees, they wore the fringe of the garments, and on the fringe of the garments told their family histories. On Jesus' garment, he said that he was the son of Joseph, heir to the throne of Israel. And this woman believed that. This is the book of Matthew, remember. All right? Isn't this pretty neat when you look into and get all the customs of the Bible, all right? Now, she goes up there and she touches the hem of his garment where his authority is. Okay? This is who he is. All right? For she was saying to herself in her heart, if only I can touch his garment, I shall get well. If only I can touch the authority that's in that garment of who he is, the King of Israel and the Messiah. But Jesus turning and having seen her said, Daughter, take courage, your faith has made you well. And at once the woman was made well. See, she believed. She believed also before she touched him. She believed before. And when Jesus came into the official's house and saw the flute players and the crowd in a noisy disorder, what were they doing? Why were the flute players there? This is what we call a wake. They were playing. They would mourn and they would play instruments. And they were playing flutes and they were mournful songs. Little kids back then, they would play like they were at a funeral or at a wedding. They had celebrations at funerals and celebrations at weddings. And they would have flute players, and the funerals would have professional mourners and professional orchestras. And that's what happened. The orchestra is here. The orchestra celebrating the death of this person. And they're mourning. All right? And he kept on saying to all of these people, see that word began there? You put down kept on saying. That's continuous action. And he kept on saying, Depart, for the girl has not died, but is asleep. She sleeps. And they kept on laughing at him. See that word began again? There's not began, it's kept on. Okay? And they kept on laughing at him. And when the crowd had been put out, he entered and took her by the hand, and the girl arose. Now, Mark 5 and verse 41, I think it is. Go over there. Mark 5 and verse 41. Mark is what we call the Gospel of Peter. So many people call it the Gospel of Peter because it looks at Jesus through Peter's eyes. And Peter looked at Jesus as the servant. All right. Dr. John, are you over there?
Is it,
Mark 5 and verse 41.
5 and 41?
Yeah.
Then he took the child by the hand and said to her, Talitha kumai, which is translated, Little girl, I say to you, arise.
All right. Talitha, little girl, kumai, come here or rise up. Get up. He spoke to her like that. Remember when he came to Lazarus' tomb, he hollered in there and he said, what?
Lazarus, come forth.
Lazarus, come forth. And he'd been dead for 3 days. Now he tells this girl, maid, rise up. Stand up. Anastasia. Stand up. Stand up. The resurrection. This is good, isn't it? Look at the gospel. And as Jesus passed on from there, 2 blind men. Now, only the Messiah would heal the blind. That's the messianic credentials. No one else ever had it. No one in history ever, in the Old Testament, no blind was ever healed. Okay? And Jesus passed on from there, and 2 blind men followed him, crying out and saying, Have mercy on us. What? This is the Gospel of Matthew. The King of Israel, which is the Son of David. Okay? Have mercy on the Son of David. Did they believe? Did they see the hem of his garment? Did they know who he was? All right? He was the Son of David. Here is the Messiah King. Herod is on the throne, but he's a toad squatting on the throne of Israel. He is not the heir to the throne. All right? He has replaced the true high priest and put his hand-picked master in there. And after he had come into the house, the blind men came up to him, and Jesus said to them, Do you believe that I am able to do this? Did they believe? Yes. They knew who he was. They believed in him. They were saved already. And they said unto him, Yes, Jehovah. Yes. Nay, Kyrie. All right, let me go look at that for sure. Nay, Kyrie. That's verse 28. And he comes to the house and approached, and the blind men said to him, to Jesus, Believe ye that I am? And they say to him, Nay, Kyrie. Nay means yes. Kyrie means what? That is the Greek equivalent of the name Jehovah or Adonai, or Hashem or Hadabar, the name, or the word, which is referring to Jehovah God. So he believed who he was. All right? And he touched their eyes, saying, Be done. Be it done to you according to your faith. And their eyes were opened, and Jesus sternly warned them, See here, let no one know about this. When you tell somebody not to do this, if you want your wife to do something but the bill, tell her she can't do it. You wouldn't dare do that, would you?
I just keep my mouth shut around the house and bob my head.
All right. But they went out and spread the news abroad in all the land, all right? And as they were going out, behold, a dumb man, demon-possessed, was brought to him. All right? Demon-possessed man was brought to him, and after the demon, now he already cast out demons out of these two Gadarene demoniacs over there that were living in the tomb that nobody could hold down. They couldn't even put chains on them. They couldn't hold them down. They couldn't chain them or anything else. And he healed them, and he sent them over there to Decapolis, around Jerash, where the 10 cities of Decapolis were. And that man, he said, you go over there and you convert your family. And he went over there where he was, and he converted them. And by the way, that was where the strongest early churches were, is right in that area. You go over there to Jerash, and you can see about 7 churches in there, in that area right there. And after the demon was cast out, the dumb man spoke. And the multitudes marveled, saying, Nothing like this was ever seen in Israel, not in the Old Testament. Nothing in the Old Testament ever happened like this. Only the Messiah. This can only be the Messiah. But the Pharisees, but the Pharisees, look at that. Verse number 34. But the Pharisees, who were the Pharisees? Who were they? Who were those rats? They were over-religious. They were overly religious people. The Pharisees. But the Pharisees were saying, He cast out demons by the ruler of demons. That don't make sense, does it? You don't cast demons out by the ruler of demons. They would not attribute him as having the power of God, the authority of God. They knew who he was. They've been checking him out all his life. Number 35. Number 35. Hey, Gabrielle, are you over there? Can you read that out loud for me?
Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness.
All right. He went about teaching in their synagogue, synagogue. And a Moed is what the Hebrew name is. They didn't even know how to speak enough Hebrew to even call their synagogue Moed. All right? Proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom and healing every kind of disease and every kind of sickness. All right? And seeing the multitudes, he felt compassion for them because they were distressed and downcast like sheep without a shepherd. Sheep without a shepherd. Well, I'll tell you what, when sheep don't have a shepherd, they're a mess. They're helpless, dumb animals. You know, the Lord used sheep to describe us, because we are just about as dumb as sheep. The average human being hasn't got any more sense than the average sheep. You go out there and you look at sheep playing in the field. Little old young sheep bouncing around out there, don't have a lick of sense. If anything comes along, they don't know how to defend themselves. They just bounce down. They're liable to run plumb to it instead of away from it. Then he said to his disciples, this is really, really important. Look at this one. Then he said to his disciples, who are the disciples?
Followers.
Huh? This is his church. He had called his church out. These people had been following him. How many people were listening to him preach at times? Thousands and thousands. How many did he feed? One time he fed 5,000 men. How many women and children were there around there? Probably at least 15,000 people in that bunch. And these people were listening. They were confirming, they were seeing these miracles. All of them were seeing these miracles. They were what we call witnesses to the miracles of Jesus. All right? Now, when things got tough, and in church, that's the way it is too. When things get tough, you're going to find out who the real disciples are. You know, we got about 10,000 people come to this church. I don't know how many of those 10,000 are saved. Do you? If something really happened, if we had persecution and bad things came, then you would find out how many saved. After the rapture, we'll find out how many were saved at Valley Baptist Church. Because the rest of them will be going to church next week. We see that, all right? The disciples. Now he says this to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful. There's a lot of people out there that need to get saved. I always tell you when you get ready to leave the class, I said, go out and do something what? Eternal. Go out and do something for the Lord. What you do for yourself, you know, you got to have a roof over your head, you got to have food, you got to have a car and all this kind of stuff. You have to have this to survive in the world today, we think. All right? But what's important? What's happening right now or what's going to happen forever? Just exactly, if you lived 80 years in this world today, if you lived 80 years, how long are you going to be in eternity? How long are you going to be in eternity? God's not. How old's your dad, Brother David?
92.
92 years old. Now he's pretty old. 92 years. That's a long life. That's a long life. But compared to 92 years compared to millions of years. Millions. Because is there even a way to compare that? How long are we going to spend in eternity?
You can't, millions.
We're either going to be in hell forever or we're going to be in heaven forever. And what place you play in those places determines what determines that is what you're doing in the world today. I'm not talking about salvation now. Well, I'm talking about the closeness with the Lord. There's a degree in hell and there's degrees in heaven. There's degrees in hell and degrees in heaven. What you do now definitely matters. All right? Go on a little bit further. The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Therefore, beseech the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into his harvest. There's a lot of people out there lost in the world today. There's a lot of people out there lost. There are a lot of lost good people in the world. There are. There's a lot of lost bad people. Now, you always want to see the good people saved, don't you? And the other ones can just go to hell, as far as you're concerned, and I'm concerned. You know, they're bad people. They're not worth to go to heaven, but you know what? Neither are the good ones. Maybe we ought to witness to the bad ones as well as the good ones. Sometimes even a rat gets saved. Did you know that? Occasionally a rat gets saved. And sometimes they make the best workers, don't they? Sometimes they make the best workers. Thank you for your attention today. We're going to go into Matthew chapter 10 next week. And who is, Brother Bill, are you going to come up here? Thank you for, and please remember the prayer request we've had.
Prayer request. Jim reminded me when we was talking about how old he was, I got an email this week